Welcome to the Silverlight Show. Now, this is going to be a special episode of the Silverlight Show. They're all special in their own way, but I'm going to be talking about sports. Normally, we don't talk about sports on this channel. Unless an athlete or something gets themselves in trouble, it's not really an area of interest for this show. However, there's a turning point coming, and I don't know how soon it's coming, but this could wind up with a sports apocalypse, the Armageddon of professional sports in North America. There's always going to be some kind of professional sport, but at the same token, we're not going to see what we're seeing now. First of all, everybody's greedy. Big surprise, billionaires are greedy. But what I suggest you do, if you're interested, find out what it's like to buy a ticket to your local sports team, whoever it may be. The Seattle Seahawks, the New England Patriots, the Toronto Maple Leafs, whatever it is. Pick a random game. I don't care what game. It doesn't need to be against their divisional rivals, and try to find a ticket. When I was growing up in the 90s, there was a special zone, and it was basically underneath the display. So you could go to the game, you could get the experience, cost you $5. I can afford $5. I'm not going to buy any refreshments at the stadium, but everybody chips in their $5. You go down and get your tickets. It's an excuse to be out with your friends. Nowadays, those tickets are closer to thousands of dollars, and this is for a regular average game. What triggered this line of reasoning is WrestleMania. Now, we're not going to argue whether wrestlers are athletes, because they absolutely are. Predetermined outcomes, I think we can argue for a lot of predetermined outcomes in sports. But the important thing is, WrestleMania has gone back to a technique that has failed before, and more sports leagues are going to that failed model. They're doing this thing called a blackout. This year, WrestleMania, the biggest wrestling event of all. Again, we're not going to argue whether wrestlers are athletes. They absolutely are. But they're going into Las Vegas. Yes, the self-proclaimed entertainment capital of the world. The place where you can watch guinea pigs fight over a carrot and bet money on it. The WWE, the entertainment monolith that it is teamed up with TKO. They're a merged company now. TKO are the ones that own UFC and stuff like that. So they have enough resources to demand Las Vegas, of all places. And Las Vegas is not a huge city as far as population. It's mostly people coming in and out. But the TKO and WWE together are saying, you cannot broadcast WrestleMania at all. You can't stream it. You can't put it on in the bars. You can't do any of that. It's called a blackout. And this does exist in the world in a lot of other leagues. In the NFL, I know this, the teams have like a 200-mile exclusion zone. And they can say nothing goes out on TV in this zone. And the purpose is they want to drive people into the stadiums where every ticket they buy, every beer they buy, every bit of popcorn they buy directly lines the team owner's pocket. Why I'm saying this is a turning point is this blackout strategy has been tried before. In the 1970s, the CFL, the Canadian Football League, was equally as popular as the NFL. And they spent a decade or more trying this strategy, blacking out their games. Now, the problem was, the CFL wasn't letting you see the Toronto Argonauts versus the Saskatchewan Roughriders, the Kansas City Chiefs were taking on the Buffalo Bills. So you could tune in and watch that. There was no restriction against that game. And the Buffalo Bills, compared to Toronto, are not that far away. Nowadays, every year the CFL has an attendance problem. And it's because they lost a generation of fans. Now, this was before ticket prices were insane. In the 90s, I could go to the Sky Dome, as it was called back then, And for $5, me and my friends could get tickets to see the game. They were not great seats, but we were there basically to screw around for a couple hours and be entertained. Heckle some players for the other team. We were, teens and college kids. That's the kind of things that you do. Nowadays, you try and find a ticket for under $500. And it's virtually impossible in anything other than the women's NBA, which I know has folded. And I'm picking on them on purpose because I know they've resurrected. There's more opportunity. And it's ridiculous what the prices are for anything, quote, professional, end quote, in the world. Now, WrestleMania is the biggest show of the year for wrestling. Undisputed. The amount of revenue, amount of pay-per-view buys, etc. For WWE and TKO to go to Las Vegas and say, all your casinos, all your big platforms that you have are not allowed to broadcast it. Do you know how much business that's going to cost them? And worse, it's going to cost them visibility. Here's where you have the big revolution coming. Going to see a game is not affordable for the average person. You can't watch it on TV. And for years, they've been selling these streaming packages. You can watch all the NHL games, and the league's going to get a couple $100 a year, and I'm sure they share that out with their franchise owners. That's just how revenue sharing works. But sooner or later, these things are going to collide. And all these sports team owners and stuff are not going to know what hit them. And they're going to do what these sports teams have always done. The WWE can probably get away with it for a while, but if you're the Seattle Seahawks, the Super Bowl champions, and you suddenly start blacking out your games and making it expensive to come to your stadium, guess what happens? People aren't going to come to your stadium. They can't afford it. And if they can't afford to go and they can't afford to have a package to sit at home and watch it, then you're not making any money. What happens then? Then you get the threats to move. Oh, we're going to move to a bigger market. Seattle's not a bad market. Las Vegas, realistically, is not a big market for the actual people who live there. There's not a ton. There's a lot of people, transients, I'm going to call them, whether they're billionaires coming in, gamblers coming in, people staying for a month, people going for their wedding. There's a lot of that. Most of those people don't really care about watching a local team. And the next thing that these owners do is they want government money. Oh, let's use Green Bay. Green Bay is not in a big market, but they've been smart. They've sold, quote, shares, end quote, to their team, to the local people. These are non-equitable shares. You don't own any part of the company's profits, but people buy them. And every 20 or 30 years or so, they sell more of them, raise some money. But Green Bay, Wisconsin is the one kicking in to keep them where they are. How many owners are coming into a local city? I need a bigger stadium. I need more of the revenue off the snacks and the beers and all that sort of stuff. I need more subsidies. Now, sooner or later, when you keep kicking out the fans, the $5 idiots like I was, and Silverlight's not going to silvercoat that, he was absolutely one of those $5 idiots. But then people don't have any investment. And no emotional investment means they aren't going to be spending money on your product. That's a death sentence for somebody whose entire product is geared towards people watching it. Look at Game of Thrones. So many people loved Game of Thrones. But what about the people who didn't? You can't get them to watch Game of Thrones. Maybe you can get them to watch an episode, but they're not going to become fans. They're not suddenly become Game of Thrones experts and argue over which house is which. I'm sorry, I didn't really watch Game of Thrones. I'm using it as a touchstone that everybody's familiar with. And now that it's over, it's not attracting a new audience. It's the old faithful. And when you exclude that old faithful or make it exclusive, you do for a little bit get the fear of missing out, the FOMO. You get this idea of exclusivity. And people are willing to show off. That's why Big corporations love having seasons tickets and skyboxes and stuff like that, so they can show off to their clients. They can give their salesmen, hey, take this client out to the big game and wine and dine them and make them okay. This is a marketing expense, and at some point you have to say this is too expensive. We're going to get to that point where smaller companies can't do that, because I don't know how many individual people actually can afford season tickets anymore. And the way that this is going to happen is they're going to wake up one day and realize attendance is down, television figures are down, because once again, if you have no emotional investment in the team, you're not going to be watching the team. You're not going to be watching the wrestlers. And since you're forcing them out by blacking out an area, not even allowing streaming, not even allowing the packages that you yourself put together to activate, you're shooting yourselves in the foot. It won't be long until either they realize this is a really stupid idea, or they jump on the bandwagon. And just like back in the 70s when the CFL, the Canadian Football League, tried this, it's going to fail again. And they're going to be wandering to the governments with their little piggy banks saying, please, sir, can I have some more? And the answer in this modern day is going to be no. And either they're going to have to put up with retracting budgets and restricting cities and, trying to play everybody off against each other, or they're going to fold. And the more they put these practices into place, the internet is supposed to be about sharing information, sharing interests. Whether you're paying to be part of an exclusive website, or whether you're just bullshitting on, Reddit or whatever with your friends, doesn't matter. If you don't have something to talk about, there's nothing more to say. If you don't have somebody to root for, you ain't going to spend money on it. And that's just the way things are. How much longer does professional sports have as an entity? Cute parallel. The Soviets, one of the ways they kept a handle on people for so long was having their own little sports leagues. So you would have your local sports team, and it would feed into the bigger city sports team, and that would feed into the bigger, and then you had like the Moscow Dynamo picking the best players. That's when the Soviet Union collapsed. All of a sudden, all those athletes who were on the state payroll suddenly had nowhere to go. We got a bunch of trained guys that are working out. They're in pretty good shape. Want to guess where a lot of those athletes went? The mob, the Russian mafia. Because they were used to living a decent standard, and the only way to have that standard could be supplied by the mafia. So the Russian mafia exploded overnight with new members. When they suddenly had these big guys around, they had nothing better to do. We're going to see a collapse in the sports and perhaps an increase in mafia activities. And there's so many different mafias, and we're a multicultural civilization today, giving these people access to the likes of, The Rock. And I'm bringing him up because everybody knows who he is. Yeah, that's a very big power play for those people. It's going to be interesting in the future, and we're watching history turn right now. And the funny thing is, these billionaires are doing it to themselves. But they're going to be off in the Caymans or wherever their wealth is hidden, while we're dealing with mobsters and lack of entertainment options and bars that closed down because they didn't have sporting events to show. Future doesn't repeat itself, but it rhymes. We're headed straight for a rhyming point. Are you ready? We wish to thank you for joining us for the Silverlight Show. If you enjoyed this, everybody asks you to like and subscribe and comment. I ask the same. But ultimately, we just want you to have a fantastic day. Take care.